chosen one. You were never meant to blend in with the background. You're not here to echo the noise or play along with illusions. You've always felt things more deeply, seen things more clearly, and questioned what others blindly accepted. And that's not a flaw. That's your edge. That's your fire. While others wait for permission to speak truth, you are the truth they're not ready for. You've been walking into rooms that weren't built for your clarity, and still, you held your ground. You've been misunderstood, dismissed, even mocked, but every time, you held on to what your gut knew long before the rest could catch up. You are not imagining things. You are not overreacting. You are tuned in. And the very things that made you feel like the outsider are exactly what make you powerful now. This is your reminder. You're not just built differently. You're built for something different. You're not here to wait for the collapse. You're here to rise from it. So stand tall. Speak louder. Walk boldly. The world may not have been ready for you before, but it needs you now. Looking for purpose and peace? Hit subscribe and start the journey. You've carried enough silences, witnessed enough inconsistencies, and endured enough contradiction to know when something doesn't add up, no matter how polished the illusion. This isn't cynicism. It's the instinct of someone who's learned to listen to what's beneath the narrative, not just the noise around it. Slowly, for understanding surface, unlinked at first glance, but unmistakably intertwined once the fog clears. First, an internal clarity. The sensitivity you were told to suppress is actually your compass, finely tuned to shifts others overlook. Second, a cultural observation. What is presented as belonging often disguises itself as theater, rehearsed, filtered, and hollow. Third, a deeper societal truth. Anything constructed atop avoidance eventually implodes, not with warning, but with force. While the crowd is distracted by forward motion, you check the alignment. While they point to aesthetics, you inspect the scaffolding. While they celebrate the spectacle, you notice the strained lines quietly widening beneath their feet. Articulating what you see becomes an act of disruption, not because it's incorrect, but because it lands before others are willing to catch it. Truth outpaces comfort, and when discomfort surfaces, it rarely blames the system. It blames the one who speaks up. The friction isn't due to falsehood, but due to inconvenient timing. Pushback comes not as debate, but as ridicule. Through glances laced with dismissal, jokes hiding disdain, or outright confrontation, your words are twisted to seem inflated or absurd. But something deeper stirs beneath their defensiveness, a recognition they're not ready to face. Instead of leaning into it, they retreat into denial and project unease back onto you. This part of awareness isolates you in time. Others stay anchored in outdated beliefs, and your attempts at conversation become acts of decoding a dialect no one else admits to forgetting. Feel God's love stirring within you? Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. Trying to signal danger becomes its own burden. You describe the fracture, and they praise the paint job. You map the hidden fault lines, and they toast the skyline view. It's safer for them to dismiss the message than revise their understanding. So they label you volatile, paranoid, or obsessive. You become the lightning rod, not because you caused the storm, but because you point to the thunder others pretend not to hear. What weighs heaviest isn't the accuracy of your perception. It's the aching wish that you were wrong. You trade being right for being believed, not for glory, but for the chance to avoid what's coming. Yet, the call inside you won't be muted. You see what others deny, and pretending otherwise would require erasing your own integrity. They remain bound to the version of events they wish were true. You walk forward with eyes open, not because it's easy, but because truth leaves you no other honest direction. Awareness at this level does not arrive without a cost. It strips away ease, familiarity, and often even the quiet in your own mind. Once a hidden pattern becomes visible, it changes everything. The illusion doesn't return to innocence once exposed. You begin to notice the rehearsed loyalty, the curated emotions, the subtle cues designed to pacify rather than awaken. Sharing this insight is rarely welcomed. You're cast as the disruptor, the one darkening their carefully lit stage with inconvenient reflections. During this unraveling, something vital rearranges within you. Your instincts evolve from passive sensing to precise decoding, not by choice, but by necessity, because too many times you've met connection dressed as theater. There's no desire to break things just for the sake of it. The aim is to avert the impact you already sense, like watching a glass lean slowly off the edge before the shatter. You become the flare in the distance, hoping to signal the drift. Yet your warning is mistaken for sabotage, not guidance. They call it drama when you're mapping fault lines. Over time, your senses catch tremors before anyone else hears a sound. Where there was once sincerity, there is now script. Laughter that once rang true now feels looped. Conversations have the weight of rehearsed lines, not shared presence. The atmosphere doesn't breathe, it echoes step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. You begin mourning the authenticity long before others acknowledge it's gone. While they repost snapshots and recite the right sentiments, you feel the substance slipping into stage reflections. And when the break finally arrives, you're already past grief, because the unraveling wasn't sudden for you. It was slow erosion witnessed in silence. In that silence, something shifts again. Speaking becomes selective, not out of fear, but discernment. Repeated distortion teaches you that truth is not always safe in public hands. What was once offered openly becomes shielded, not to withhold, but to protect. You learn that some ears only hear what confirms their agenda, not what challenges it. So, you stop trying to correct a misunderstanding. Your absence of words becomes its own kind of presence, a pause loaded with intent. They assume you've surrendered. What they don't see is the reconfiguration happening quietly. Silence becomes armor, not retreat. It's not about being passive, but about choosing precision over noise. Eventually, clarity forms in another way. Convincing people is no longer the mission. The focus shifts to endurance, to standing firm while everything they once trusted begins to bend. This isn't a pursuit of victory, but of readiness. Those who ignored the signs gradually write themselves out of the chapter you're constructing. And in the quiet of that building, something sacred happens. While others perform alignment, you gather with those who value depth over harmony, essence over appearance. These are not agreeable spectators. They are resilient co-creators. They don't wait for safety to take a stand. They show up when presence requires risk. You begin to see the difference clearly between those who want transformation and those who want applause. The former don't just walk with you when it's easy. They help carry the weight. And through them, you remember, builders don't need an audience. They need other builders. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. There comes a moment when what unsettles you most isn't the rejection or the silence. It's the slow, surgical shift of loyalty into transaction. Bonds once built on shared intent begin to reveal fine print. What felt like unity turns out to be negotiation cloaked in warmth. Devotion is not tied to belief anymore, but to advantage. Loyalty is traded like currency, weighed by risk and gain, adjusted with every fluctuation in power or popularity. What they brand as growth is often just disguise. Adaptation not from understanding, but from a hunger for position. You detect the slight pivot in their posture, the vague affirmations that leave escape routes open. They don't stand close because they care. They linger just near enough to claim credit if things go well, and far enough to vanish without consequence when pressure arrives. Calling this out is socially dangerous. It draws labels no one wants to wear. So instead you watch. Watch as commitment mutates into calculation. Watch how devotion dries up the moment it's no longer profitable. It's not disappointment that hits hardest, it's clarity. You begin to understand. Some were never devoted to the cause, only to the comfort it afforded. When comfort is threatened, so is their mask. This realization doesn't remain isolated. It collides with a deeper unraveling. The recognition that what once looked like community was actually a scripted broadcast. The image of connection dissolves under scrutiny. Behind every show of unity lies choreography. What appeared spontaneous reveals itself as rehearsed rhythm, where meaning is rehearsed, not felt. The more you observe, the more cracks you see beneath the staging. Status posturing wears the mask of equality. Surface collaboration conceals subtle rivalry. Wisdom is often reduced to performance, and mentorship becomes a marketing tool for self-preservation. The gathering isn't about depth, it's a forum of avatars, polished and optimized for the feed. Even the way they speak starts to feel rehearsed. Their dialogues follow tracks like preloaded voice lines, buzzwords rotated endlessly to maintain the illusion of depth. Words meant to liberate have been diluted into slogans. Authenticity is coded language for curated vulnerability. Growth means engagement. Healing is monetized. But what disturbs most is the emotional policing that arises beneath it all. Disagreement isn't treated as divergence, it's pathologized. To question is to be marked as unwell. A different view becomes a symptom, not a stance. Independent thought is seen as contamination. Not only do minds shut, but people begin to self-censor out of fear that their reflections might cost them a place at the table. Feel God's love stirring within you? Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. In time, intellect is dulled, not through ignorance, but through pressure. Awareness doesn't fade because it failed. It gets quietly buried under survival. And the saddest part? They don't even realize it's happening. There's a breaking point in perception, one that doesn't come with noise, but with a subtle, devastating shift. What once felt like a shared effort begins to unravel into something else entirely. The smiles start feeling rehearsed, the encouragement too well-timed. It doesn't happen all at once, but over time you begin to sense that this isn't unity, it's strategy. Roles replace relationships. Applause replaces understanding. At first, the environment feels alive with purpose, but eventually, you notice how support seems to arrive only when eyes are watching. That recognition has less to do with depth and more with display. What's presented as a gathering of kindred spirits reveals itself as a staged production. You start to realize that merit is measured not by truth, but by visibility. Being genuine becomes optional. Being noticeable becomes essential. Everything runs on exchange. Praise is not free. It's part of a loop. If you stop playing your part, the air grows colder. Not because you've changed, but because you've stopped fitting the architecture of their illusion. They don't remove you by force. They just stop acknowledging you. The system doesn't collapse when challenged. It erases what it can't use. That clarity stings most when you consider what you gave. You weren't pretending. You meant it. You offered the raw, real pieces of yourself, believing it mattered. But the structure wasn't built to receive truth. It was built to consume it. Your openness becomes the scaffolding for someone else's presentation. They borrow your reflections and rebrand them. Your evolution becomes their content. This isn't just disappointment. It's a unique kind of solitude, being surrounded by many, yet touched by none. It's realizing you're in a world where connections have been flattened into performances. Realness becomes liability. Vulnerability is data. And the price of belonging is silence. As this lands, a new pattern becomes impossible to unsee. The people held up as guides are often curating, not leading. Their influence depends not on vision, but on staying in focus. Their every statement is crafted not to serve, but to maintain position. They build circles where only affirmation is allowed. Questioning isn't welcomed, it's punished. Feedback becomes threat. Inquiry is framed as disloyalty. You begin to hear how their words echo each other. Lofty, poetic, and perfectly hollow. There's rhythm, but no resolution. A flood of declarations, with nothing real beneath them. Movement with no direction. They don't steer, they orbit. Around themselves. Around their audience's approval. And when things grow quiet, they invent disruption to stay in the center. Manufactured urgency becomes their currency. Emotional chaos becomes their magnet. They don't just react to storms, they seed them. Their proximity feels intimate, but it's constructed. They simulate closeness through shared outrage and public vulnerability, not to connect, but to anchor control. They're not building futures. They're recycling tension, not to grow with you, but to keep you circling around them. What begins as a sincere search for truth can be quietly hijacked by those who know how to mimic its language, but not its essence. They study longing, not to nurture it, but to monetize it. Growth becomes a sales pitch. Depth becomes content. The longing to evolve is reduced to a performance metric. And those who are most open-hearted, most willing to change, often become the easiest to manipulate. They package progress in neat, digestible steps, offering transformation not as a journey, but as a brand. But the deepest betrayal isn't the commercialization. It's the quiet dismantling of inner trust. Through calculated flattery mixed with subtle distortion, they pull people away from their instincts and hand them back distorted reflections. The path becomes less about self-discovery and more about conformity beneath the illusion of empowerment. Leaving this system isn't rebellion, it's awakening. Still, they won't see it that way. When you stop fitting into the version of you that serves their comfort, they rewrite you into a character that explains away their discomfort. You're painted as unstable, ungrateful, unaligned. But transformation has never asked for permission. It arrives without apology. And that, to those addicted to control, feels like sabotage. Your refusal to shrink unravels the structure they depend on. Not because you attack it, but because your presence outside the mold threatens the story they've convinced themselves is truth. Authentic expansion unsettles those who built their world around your stagnation. You don't seek conflict, but you're becoming as red as defiance by those who depended on your silence. That step into freedom, however, is not without cost. The moment you turn away from the familiar machinery of approval and scripted affirmation, you enter a space that's both empty and sacred. There are no cues to follow, no group consensus to absorb into. What's left is raw and unclear, but it's yours. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. It's a quiet undoing. You shed roles, one by one, and realize how much of yourself had been shaped to accommodate the expectations of others. The relief is not immediate, it's tangled in sorrow. Because even though what you left was conditional, it still held memories, still held meaning. You grieve not just people, but versions of yourself that lived inside their vision. Even so, in the absence of noise, you begin to recognize something you'd forgotten. The sensation of stillness that doesn't require translation. No more reshaping your truth for palatability. No more bracing yourself for misinterpretation. For the first time in ages, you're not narrating your existence for anyone else's comfort. You simply are unfiltered, unendorsed, and unafraid. And in that quiet, something sacred begins. The rebuilding of a self that was never lost, only buried beneath performance. There's a moment when the confusion dissolves, not because the world becomes clear, but because you've grown into someone who sees through the illusion. What you endured wasn't punishment, but refinement. Every distorted promise you've uncovered, every subtle manipulation you've navigated, sharpened your discernment until truth became unmistakable. Every facade you saw fall away trained you to detect sincerity with precision. It didn't just shape how you see people. It redefined how you see patterns. The internal shifts, the social unraveling, and the structural decay were never isolated events. They weren't random threads. They were connected by a single current, your evolving awareness. What others mistake as suspicion is actually skill. You didn't stumble into foresight. You earned it by refusing to numb what your body, your mind, and your spirit kept alerting you to. The dysfunction wasn't contained in one group or situation. It was part of the very architecture holding up much of what people praise. You didn't need to guess the downfall. You simply understood the blueprint. While others were captivated by surface, you were studying weight distribution. You recognized that no matter how fast something moves, if it's built on denial, it eventually buckles. Collapse doesn't arrive like a thief. It follows the path it was set on from inception. You weren't waiting for the cracks. You watched them form. And when it finally caves in, you're not shocked. You're steady. This isn't about doom. It's about comprehension. You see how repetition of avoidance replaces real repair. How spectacle distracts from substance. How questions are punished instead of welcomed. You hear the shutdown disguised as encouragement. Every just focus on the good, used to silence critical thought. This isn't negativity. It's reality spoken without fear. Feel God's love stirring within you? Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. Because no amount of forward motion saves something that was never anchored. And no amount of cheering can mask a structure giving way from within. You don't take pleasure in being right. You just recognize the design. And from here, you no longer chase the closure they'll never offer. Not because you've given up, but because you've outgrown the need. What used to feel like loose ends now reveals itself as a loop meant to keep you spinning. You don't need them to return with answers. You don't need a rewritten narrative. You don't even need the truth from their mouth. What you seek now is something far simpler and more sacred. Proof that you weren't mistaken, that the instincts you once doubted were accurate, that your clarity wasn't imagination, it was alignment. And in time, that confirmation arrives, not in dramatic apologies, but in small, visible truths, in the way roles fall apart, in how carefully rehearsed words lose their grip, in how those who once controlled the story can no longer hold the scene. You don't interfere. You don't explain. You don't demand. You just observe what unfolds naturally when masks are no longer held up by applause. When the curtain drops, reality walks in. And all along, it was your clarity, not your compliance, that kept you steady. It all begins to make sense the moment you realize that what felt like a series of betrayals was actually a forging. You've walked through distortion, through silence, through the tearing down of illusions, and emerged not bitter, but sharpened. What you carry now isn't just insight. It's a rare kind of clarity that can't be taught, only earned. It wasn't given. It was carved into you through experience. And now, with that understanding etched into your perception, a quiet task emerges. Not a mission of grand speeches or spotlights. Not the kind of guidance that builds podiums or demands followers. But a steadier, subtler role. Living proof that another path is possible. One where honesty isn't sacrificed for comfort, where integrity is non-negotiable, and where wholeness isn't a performance, it's a posture. You're not here to lead with titles. You lead by existence. The resonance of a life not molded by approval speaks louder than declarations. Those who once told you to tone down your perception now look for your discernment in crisis. What once felt like a burden, the hyper-awareness, the intense empathy, the intuitive alarms, now reveals itself as precision, not decoration, but necessity. And what you once apologized for becomes exactly what others need. Your refusal to stay silent gives quiet permission to those still trapped in the performance. Your instincts, once dismissed as too much, become a map for those trying to find solid ground in a collapsing theater of appearances. What felt like exile transforms into preparation for something far more meaningful. You didn't ask for this responsibility, but it finds you because of what you've lived through. And it's not about carrying others, it's about illuminating the exits. Not dragging people out, but standing as a quiet landmark to those trying to leave on their own. Your presence says, there is something beyond this. You're not wrong for wanting it. Each part of your path now fits into a structure you couldn't see before. What looked like isolation was construction. What felt like dismantling was foundation. And you're not looking back for apologies. You no longer need them. You no longer need anything explained or restored. The truth is unfolding, not because you force it, but because it always was, and now it has space to be seen. You weren't ahead for attention. You were ahead for a reason, because someone had to walk through it first and name it clearly, without turning it into spectacle. And that clarity, once doubted, now becomes indispensable. Not for fame, not for dominance, but because something honest must exist when everything around it is collapsing under pretense. This isn't about fixing everything that's broken. It's about designing what was never built right to begin with. It's about refusing to recycle old systems and choosing instead to imagine new ones. And no, it doesn't come with applause, but it comes with alignment. And that, finally, is enough. What once made you feel misfit is now your distinguishing power. The traits they called too much, too intense, too disruptive. These are the very tools that will shape what comes next. You are not here to be embraced by the old world. You are here to help sculpt the one that follows it. Every time you doubted your clarity, you were still holding it. Every time you questioned your role, you were still embodying it. And now, There's no more need for approval, no more shrinking to fit, no more waiting to be invited in. The role was always yours. Not because you claimed it, but because you walked through the fire without losing yourself. What happens next needs your vision, your courage, your unwavering refusal to play along. You are not here to be accepted. You are here to be true. And truth, once it has shape, becomes a lighthouse. No spotlight necessary. Just presence. Just proof. The world doesn't need another performer. It needs someone who remembers what's real. That someone is already here. That someone is already ready. Welcome to the purpose your pain prepared you for. Welcome to the beginning you didn't know you were building.